Hello, COMM8400 students. This is week 2 again, another self-directed lesson. I'm going to offer some thoughts here in this little mini lecture, and then I've got a bit of an activity for you to do. Right now, we'll be talking about ways to approach asking questions. And questions are a wonderful thing. Questions are great, but don't load a question in a way that makes the other person angry. There are ways to work on this, and I'll offer a few coming up here in a moment. So we're talking about approaches to questioning. Think about open questions, open compared to closed. This is something that you'll see on the quiz in a question next week. But think about this, an open question gives many opportunities for someone to answer. Things like, well, what happened next? What made you say that? That's interesting. What do you think is going on? So that kind of what, for me as a newspaper reporter, a what question was wonderful, because I never knew where somebody was going to answer, because they often don't know themselves, because they have to think through their answer, and sometimes they would surprise themselves with what they said. And oftentimes it was profound and fascinating when someone's given a chance to say, oh, I want to hear what you're thinking. What prompted you to do that? That's a short question that's complex and wonderful, because it gives the person room to answer. Other questions, like on the slide, how can we improve this setup? Why do you think this is a problem? In what way will this affect our performance? Those are all open questions, but I do ask you to be very careful with using the word why. For me, using why is this happening? There's often a bit of a hidden or kind of packaged blame with that. It's like, why is this happening? It's like you're the problem for allowing it to happen. So instead of saying, why is this happening? You might consider phrasing the question like, oh, what do you think is happening here? What do you think didn't work well? That takes it away from directing it to the person, to the situation. You can use why questions, but I would use them after several what or how questions to help clarify things once you've been able to work into it. I don't think asking why as your first question is going to be as effective, but you're asking an open question, which is better than closed questions. Usually a closed question, you have yes or no as your answer. You can use these questions to clarify details, but they kill conversations. It's for accuracy. What should we do? What is a specific action you need taken is often as a yes or a no answer. So some options are here on the screen. You can say something like, are you saying you'd like to have more support? Well, yes or no. That's confirming a yes or a no. Should we email this report? Yes or no, in a business context. Have we covered all aspects of this issue? Yes or no. And if the answer is yes, the next question is open. What else should we talk about? You can use closed questions, yes or no questions, to start and launch to a what question. It becomes that closed, closed, open, 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 closed, confirm, closed, confirm, closed, confirm something, open, open, open. It helps you understand and move around within the information. Watch out for loaded questions. A loaded question in the slang I'm using here for North American language. A loaded question is difficult to answer except for the way the person who's asking wants it to answer, or it's admitting something. It's something you might see in courtroom television dramas where the lawyer asks a question like, when did you stop stealing money from your boss? There's actually two things in there. He's asking, do you steal money from your boss, and are you still doing that? So it's difficult that you have to stop and say, oh, I do not steal money from my boss. It's that. Be wary of putting your own answer into the question and challenging the other person. That isn't a good conversational skill, and it is not I don't think, effective in working through and problem solving. If it's confrontation, like in a courtroom, yes, you're going to see this. And actually, judges are very careful and are very aware of stopping lawyers from attacking people who are testifying by using loaded questions. There's a very specific rules they're allowed to use. You'll see how I object. Well, yeah, because it's not really a question, it's an accusation. So there's some examples on here, but it's that, have you stopped stealing from your boss? I think that's a good example. But why haven't you done anything to stop this massive pollution? First off, why? It's blaming the person. They're saying that there's pollution, and why haven't you stopped it? What is the point of you continuing? Like, it's a whole lot of ugly smashed into that question. The other one here, it sounds kind of okay. Is it really that difficult to keep costs down? That's coming from the status of, well, what's your problem? Why can't you do what I want, which is keeping costs down? Okay, and the last one, this one's a bit passive aggressive. I've had this. When will we get a report from you without mistakes? That's not saying that, oh, there's errors in it. It's already concluding it. They're not asking what happened. They're saying that that's judgment all the way. Judging you and blaming you as you're being pressured to produce more. I hope you never get a question like that from a manager, because it hurts, because you're going like, there's no good way to answer that to the person who can fire you. So be wary of loaded questions like that. Hypothetical questions. These are a special kind of open question. It's really big questions. What if? What if we did this? You can answer any way you want. This is not an effective question to ask if you're working towards a solution, and you have to keep working. You're well through a process to find a solution. If you're almost to the end of something and you say, oh, what if we did this instead? People are going to go, why didn't you ask that 2 hours ago? Sometimes it's important, if you realize it, you might say something like, whoa, I just thought of something. I want to make sure we cover this issue. I don't think we've talked about this, but what happens if this? You have to kind of frame it if you're going to put a big what if question in the end of a process. However, if you're having this kind of a brainstorming thinking process early in a process, something like, what do you think, what would you do if your budget were cut by 15%? Not that it should be, but asking you what would be the outcome of it, and then you can use your skills and experience to explain what's going on. It's the other one that's here on the screen. If you were in charge of this group, a little condition, if you were in charge of this group, what changes would you propose? So that puts you in the spot to answer a question as if you were going to change a bigger package. The challenge with these hypothetical questions is sometimes they come across as an accusation again, because it's almost diminishing the other person. There's a bit of a strangeness around that. But think about a what if question if you've got space and time and you really want to hear big information. But it takes a long time to work through a conversation if you have a time limited goal. So beware of using questions in different ways, in different circumstances. Two-part questions. These are killers. I've never thought it's fair to ask a 2 or a 3-part question with a bunch of things in it. Ask a question, then ask the next question. Okay, here's a couple of examples on the screen. I'll use the second one. How can we better deploy our sales force as well as increase our promotional efforts? Those are two separate issues. It would be better and far more effective if the person asking the question asked the first question, had information about that, then asked the second, and then oftentimes say, okay, what's the best way to work these two together? You have to work through the process. It's too much work for someone who's being questioned to often smash all this together and give a cohesive answer. So if you ever are on the receiving of a two-part question, say, okay, I hear two questions there. And the first question I heard was this, you give your answer. Then you would say, and what was the second question? Even if you know what it is, pause, because the person after hearing your first answer may have a different question, and you may never get to that second question. But always pause and say, okay, I've heard two questions there. The first question I heard was this, and answer it. And then say, I think the second question, what was the second question? That's okay, because you put your focus on the first. But be wary of pounding people with two pieces of things in the same time. It's like, that's difficult. It's difficult to sort that out. So there is an activity coming up. I'd like you to write up, just think about yourself on a note for yourself. Write an open question, a closed, a loaded, hypothetical, and a two-part question. And it's this little scenario here. It's on the screen. This is in the PowerPoint for the class. I would just like you to pause and think, okay, if I'm going to ask a question, how would I ask an open question based on this information in response to it? How would I write a closed question, a specific one? Like, for example, a closed question is, do you wish to install SharePoint 2010? Yes or no? Open question might be, what do you think about Google's solution? Open. Hypothetical question might be something like, so what would happen if I asked one of our experts in Microsoft SharePoint to speak with you to answer your questions? That's kind of hypothetical. That's a bit more open. You can think about that. It's a big question. That way the person can answer lots of questions back. So play with this, please, and just write it out and work through it. And we'll briefly talk about it in class. But this is a question, this is an awareness practice. If you can get in the practice of asking most of your questions that start with what, the world will be a good place. What is a powerful word in conversation. Using what and using pauses so people can answer. That's golden information I hope you take away from this class. For now, please take a look at the question scenario. Open question, closed question, loaded question, hypothetical two-part. Think it through. Open up a document and just write it out. Sometimes you may have to do a little bit of writing to shape your question. But enjoy that. There'll be another self-directed lesson after this. So complete this and come back to that next one. I'll see you there. Bye-bye.